Jewish events are probably the most secure events out of any cultural, ethnic, religious sect, with the most security, basically like the UN, And the reality is, if somebody wants to come and murder somebody who's coming out of an event, there's no security guard or video camera that can stop that. And I think we may have seen the global intifada call reach our doors in the United States. And so I think Jewish safety is really a question right now. And at the same time, I think we're finally, I hope, seeing people willing to do something about stopping the war and starving a whole country of people.
That was Naomi Less discussing the song Until When, which I wrote after being inspired by Psalm 13. I'm Shep Rosenman. This is The Rest is Commentary, where we discuss what songs inspired by the Psalms or Tehillim inspire in my guests. Naomi is a Brooklyn-based, internationally celebrated singer, composer, musician, ritual leader, and educator. Her diverse original music is sung in worship communities worldwide, including Lab Shul. She is a founding Lab Shul ritual leader and its associate director. She was a founding company member of Storytelling, as well as its director of Storytelling. Naomi's signature music initiatives include Jewish Chicks Rock band programs, creator-host of Jewish Women Rock, a show on Jewish Rock Radio, and she is the co-creator of Trimester, that's T-R-Y, a touring performance piece that brings to light the oft-hidden stories of fertility challenges through narrative, song, and dance. Naomi studied at Northwestern University, JTS's Davidson School, Institute for Informal Jewish Education at Brandeis University, the Institute for Jewish Spirituality and Changecraft, formerly the Center for Leadership Initiatives. Listen to Naomi's music on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, and elsewhere where music is streamed. This episode is dedicated to the memories of Sarah Milgrim and Yaron Lishinsky, who were murdered the day before Naomi and I had the conversation that became this episode. May their memories be a blessing. Naomi and I discuss Jewish identity and safety, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, varieties of Zionism, staying at the table even in difficult conversations, finding hope, choosing love, teaching critical thinking, rituals as tools to help navigate grief and provide community support, and so much more. Let's start off by listening to Until When.
Until when will you provoke me? Until when will you not believe me? I've given you signs. I've given you signs. I've given you signs, and you wonder. Until when will you hide your face from me? Until when will you cause my heart to grieve? I've given you signs. I've given you signs. I've given you signs, and you wonder. You wonder. Look at me. Answer me. Until when will you provoke me? Until when will you hide your face from me? I've given you signs. I've given you signs. I've given you signs. And you wonder. I've given you signs. I've given you signs. I've given you signs. I've given you signs. Giving you signs and wonder.
This is one of those songs that just poured out of me. A few weeks ago, I was in just a foul mood, just foul. And it's been happening a lot, the rise in anti-Semitism. Before we started recording, we talked about what happened yesterday.
Well, I think we crossed a threshold in terms of, Jewish events are probably the most secure events out of any cultural, ethnic, religious sect, with the most security, basically like the UN, and the reality is if somebody wants to come and murder somebody who's coming out of an event, there's no security guard or video camera that can stop that. And I think we may have seen the global intifada call reach our doors in the United States. And so I think Jewish safety is really a question right now. And at the same time, I think we're finally, I hope, seeing people willing to do something about stopping the war and starving a whole country of people, So, anyway, that's, yeah.
So I want to roll back for context because now that you've mentioned this, I think it's important that you tell whoever hears this how you self-describe with respect to Israel, in addition to hearing all of that.
I have lived in Israel. I have dear best friends who live there. I'm a lefty Zionist. I'm a super lefty Zionist, I guess, if I had to put myself in some sort of camp. And I believe that all people need to live in safety and security wherever you are. And certainly the Palestinian citizens in Israel, I've fought for many, many, many years around equal rights in Israel, spiritual civil rights, feminist rights, racism. Israel is a society that has real big challenges, just like, wow, the United States does as well too. And so I am very committed to trying to help the society in whatever way I can as like a United States citizen who's from afar, who can't really direct traffic unless it actually impacts my Jewish safety or security. I want to be supportive to those initiatives on the ground that are really working around civil rights in a country that I believe should exist as a Jewish state with full rights and not second-class citizenship to people who are not Jewish there.
So first, I want to start this section by being a little bit more explicit about what happened yesterday. Outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., Yaron Lishinsky, who was 30, and Sarah Lynn Milgrim were murdered.
Correct.
And the murderer, I refuse to name him because he doesn't deserve that, shouted "Free Palestine." And that's what you mean by...
Which is a chant at many, many protests.
And that's specifically what you meant, that the global intifada has now come to root in a new way. It's anti-Semitism has been growing in the United States and around the world.
So it's really become problematic. And up until this point, I've been sort of like, let's not call everything anti-Semitic. We really need to be careful about this. We're conflating things too. And my fear in in 2 nights ago's murder is that, from my understanding, there have been calls for militarize and intifada calls. And I am afraid that, killing is never okay. Like diplomatic, I'm always a, proponent of, any way of diplomatically addressing challenges within peoples or cultures or countries. And my fear is that there was a line that was now crossed in this country. I think the line has crossed in other places too, but I don't think, we've had many anti-Semitic events in this country. Tree of Life, but we haven't necessarily had anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic events necessarily with killings in this country. It's mostly been like, maybe, I don't know. So I'm just like, there's fear, and I refuse to kind of like let that fear take over. But I am concerned that we have crossed a line now. Let's talk about music. Can we? No. No, I know. I'm joking. This is important, and it's important for us to have this dialogue. I'm just like, oh. I knew growing up the highest concentration of Holocaust survivors outside of Israel was in Skokie, Illinois. So we knew that in our bones, but I never had any anti-Semitic. Not even my first anti-Semitic kind of like on the receiving end was like already in my mid-20s in New York City by some random person who like called me a kike on the street. And I'm like, how did she know I was Jewish? And I'm on the phone with my dad at that time, his memory be a blessing. And I like just literally like, I found out how I responded to that. She's like, you dirty kike, blah, 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 blah. And she was mentally not well. And I'm like, come back here and say it to my face. B blank TCH, And my dad's like, Naomi, quit it. Calm down. He's like yelling in the phone at me. He's like, just that was like my first ever experience with somebody. I went to Camp Ramah. We'd go on field trips and they'd be like, we're Jewish, so make sure you represent well. Like you don't do anything bad, but it was never out of fear. It was just like to represent Jews well, right? It wasn't like something's going to happen to you. Like that's, and now I have my daughter who is in public school, who I guess Jewish educator did a good job maybe at raising her. But the self-portraits that they have on the wall in second grade, this was hers. Can you see this? It's a girl. And she has a Jewish star on.
Oh my God,
shirt.
that's so beautiful.
And like all these pictures are there, and it like just stands out. And I look at her teacher, and I'm like, oh my God. And I don't even know what to feel, because on the one hand, I'm like super proud, good job, Jewish ritual leader, educator, mom. And on the other hand, I'm like, oh God, don't out yourself in public school, which is our reality.
Right. So this is really, I think, at the core of the song. So whereas you grew up already where, go to the county fair and kind of represent the Jews well, we had that plus watch out, because there are a lot of anti-Semites in Orange County. So, and when I was growing up in Far Rockaway, which was a very mixed city, you had Beach 9th Street, which was like the borderline, the green line, if you will.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If you had the Young Israel Far Rockaway and the White Shul on Beach 9th, you also had Yeshiva Far Rockaway, which was close by. And if you crossed over Beach 9th, well, then you were in a combination of what was then called the projects, housing developments, and a variety of homes, some Jewish, some not, Irish, Black, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Italian. There was everything there. And if you crossed Beach 9th Street, there was a really solid chance that one of the gangs would follow you with chains and knives and nunchucks, not guns so much.
Yeah.
And now, maybe I'm overblowing it because I was a little kid, but on countless occasions, I had to run into my aunt and uncle. I was friendly with a musician from the music gallery in Woodmere, a guy named Larry Mitchell, who's black. And I knew he lived in the housing development on the corner of Beach 9th and Caffrey, where I lived. So like I would run in there and knock on his door, hoping that the gang would not get to me before Larry or his mom opened it up. Like there's lots of conversations to unpack about that. And so I now want to loop in the Rabbi Shore. Do you know Rafi Shore, Raphael Shore? He runs something called Unpacked and Open Door Media. It used to be called Jerusalem Online University. And he's typically described as pretty conservative on Israel. He's even as conservative as he is, his reference point includes seeing people who are other, including and especially Palestinian folks. He lives in Jerusalem, and engaging with them and seeing the humanity and recognizing the pain of that. And the question is, how do we get people with such differing viewpoints to actually go in the same direction to see the other, to create change? Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately what this song is about for me. And now I'll tell the genesis of it. It was a Saturday morning. Sherry read the news to me, and I was just miserable. I'm no Trump fan and never understood how much of my family didn't see his authoritarian tendencies. And I recognized that in Trump 1, he made certain choices that were good for Israel. And at the beginning of Trump 2, it seemed like it was headed in the same direction. And now there's a major question mark. And my cousins who were so supportive of him are now like, well, I don't know. And all of that brings us to this moment where Sherry and I had our 50th conversation about what do we do if 2025 is 1929, 1933? You know, Hitler's been elected as a chancellor, and Trump allows or enforces anti-Semitism to grow in the world. And by the way, the events of yesterday were not coming from the uber right. They were coming from the uber left. So now we have it coming and going from both sides.
I know.
Is this a moment where we have to pack up our shit and get out, just like our ancestors did? And I was so miserable. And Sherry's like, Shabbos is over. Let's just watch some bad TV. And I sat down with her for 10 minutes, crawling out of my skin. I'm like, I'm just going down to the studio. I went down, and the song started with the guitar riff. And yesterday I finished the 2-week Shanna in a Dress songwriting challenge. And it was funny songs because I really felt the need to like have some lightness and humor. And Shanna asked us to post about our experience. So I said, okay, I told my watch to set a timer for 10 minutes, and I just wrote a song about the experience. So like, I know how to write quickly. Quickly doesn't necessarily mean good. It just means getting it done. So that's what I thought I was doing. I'm just going to pound this out. And I turned on Logic. That's my digital audio workstation, my recorder in fancy terms. Yeah. And I just started playing guitar, and this groove, all 3 parts of this groove made their way into the song. 15 minutes later, I was like, this is a song. I cut it up, and I grabbed my favorite drum loops, the Yurt Rock collection, and I found what I thought worked. 10 minutes later, I had a bass track. Then I was like, okay, the music is done. What's the melody? And I just detuned my E strings so that I'm in drop D. I did both of them, and that's what created this wonderful dissonance for various parts of the song. And, you know, look, if you're a heavy metal player and you like things like Polyphia and Jack Gardner and all those guys, like, you pick up some tricks from them.
I did feel a little STP in there.
1,000%. And I played it on that Les Paul, which I believe is still in drop D. And I then just kind of looped it and played the song over and over until a melody burst forth. And sometimes my melodies burst forth with words. Sometimes they burst forth with mumbles, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I lichadodi it, right? This was not a lichadodi, which is a song from Friday night, a poem. So I started, I have two ways of finding my Tehillim when I start with the music. One is I'll open up a sefer, an actual volume that you can hold in your hands, and I'll randomly go for one that I'll check to see if I've written already, because I've written 100, I've written songs for 100 of the 150 so far. I have 25 repeats, but I don't mind repeating. The other way I go, and this is what I did for this one, was I go to Perplexity, which is an AI aggregator, and I will ask it a question. And the question I asked it was, what Psalms talk about God's impatience? And it gave me several choices. And when I read Psalm 13, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And my practice is to not, even though it's very tempting to start with the language of the psalm, my practice is to do a deep dive, to go through every pasuk, learn it, understand the structure of the psalm, and then look at the commentators. Now, because both in music and in songwriting and in learning, like I can just do it forever. Like I could polish endlessly and learn endlessly. Like I put time limits on it or process limits. So my process limit is if I'm using Sefaria and it has to have an English translation or be short. Like, because I don't mind translating the Hebrew or Aramaic, but I don't want to spend hours doing it. And then whatever's on my shelf, whether I'm in LA or Oxnard, those are good too. But with this one, like in the first second, I don't know if you took a look at the source sheet I sent to you, but it took me right to two things. Where's this ad ana coming from? And the Midrash, it's in Bamidbar Rabbah, Numbers Rabbah, talks about connecting this verse from Tehillim in Psalm 13 with the verse in Bamidbar, in Numbers. I don't know if it's God speaking or a human speaking. And the Lord said to Moses, until when will this people provoke me? And until when will they not believe in me with all the signs that I have performed in their midst? It's Numbers 14:11. Until when will you provoke me? I'm looking for a response.
You know, this could be human to human, think parent to child. So if you take that God character in the Bible as parent, right? You could play, again, Torah was written down and it's an oral scroll, right? The story. And so you could read it, as many have said you could read it, as instead, like thinking about a parent, oh, for crying out loud, how long? Oh, please, like it's that level of like, I love you and I can't, like, seriously, how many times have I asked you not to whine? How many? So like there could be until when, and it also could be for the love of everything, please, how long are you going to do this? So to me, those two God characters in the Bible are different characters, because one is like, I have the never ending patience, right? Which is one of the 13 qualities of the divine.
And God allows for the reintroduction of patience. To use your example, it's like, okay, God, leave the table, take a breath, have a 2-minute meditation, come back to the table, please. And God does, right? And that's the powerful modeling of learning patience and seeing the other.
So again, and back to our earlier conversation around these, the bifurcation, right? And just us not really being able to listen to each other. If you feel yourself, and this is psychology, right? If you feel yourself getting angry or triggered or anxious or just feeling defensive, then you're not able to actually hear somebody else. And so what do you need to do to kind of like let that go? Larger goal. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm really trying to understand with curiosity and whatever. But it's hard to do that when you find yourself triggered or angry or anxious or unjustly categorized in a box, So that's really hard. That takes a lot of nuance.
Yep, 100%. Even just feeling the feels. I mean, that's how this song came out. I used to think of myself as an intellectual songwriter, and I have that tendency, meaning not that my songs are intellectual, but they came from my brain.
Yep.
But this song is just, it's the feels, right? And for me, it was like, well, God, how long are you going to let this go on? And Israel, how long are you going to, Israel, the government, the state of Israel, how long are you going to get this on? Hamas, how long are you going to let this go on? Palestinian, innocent civilian Palestinians, we can debate how many there are. Rabbi Shor thinks that there probably are fewer than you might, right?
Yeah.
Until when will you allow Hamas to stay in power and not come back to the table and engage? And I needed to get that bile out. And by the way, it's not like I was in a better mood afterwards. I was still in a crappy mood, but I could come back to the table. I could read a little bit of news. I could read some headlines. I could be with my family and shop on a Sunday or have people over for a weekend or whatever it was that we did.
What I want to say also about the piece, because we've talked about the words and we've really focused on the words, and you did give us the whole mode of how it was created and the catharsis, et cetera. And I said catharsis, you didn't say that, but is that one of the choices you made musically, I actually also interpret with this piece around othering and coming to the table and what might you need to be able to stay at the table. And the space of silence and the pause of the rest is commentary, haha, but the rest and the stark stops that happen in there is almost like a reset. And then there's more. And then there's a pause there too. So the use of silence in there and space in there, to me, there's something in there that actually reflects a lot of this conversation. I was very struck by that when I first heard it. And now, based on our conversation, I feel it even more. It's like sometimes you just have to stop talking.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm coming back.
That's a really interesting comment. I don't know that I intended that the way you've articulated.
Of course you didn't. I don't care. That's how I took it.
No, but that's I feel as a songwriter, there must be white fire in addition to the black fire. That's talking about Torah text. You have to create space. And that's something I came to later in life because I spent many years doing prog rock where we were doing, 7/8 against 4/4 and not creating breaks or creating a sharp break and then coming back to the complexity. So I was talking about this.
Which has its purpose also. That also has its purpose. This to me felt and also ad matai, until when. It's you almost feel it over and over again, right? It keeps happening.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that you processed something I didn't intend, but it works.
Amen. Well, that's what we find in the midst of the Psalms. What can I say?
Right. And that's what we have when you have good chavrusa. You point things out to each other and it becomes even better.
Love that.
Okay, so this leads me to where I wanted to go, which is with all of the scary that we're talking about, in the research that we've done, I, for one, don't know that there's someplace better.
Correct. Somebody told me, was it the Netherlands? Somebody told me that somewhere probably in the Netherlands is the best place for Jews to go or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, really? I don't know. I don't know that there's any place in the world that's safe for us. So, why not here? But what I am concerned about, I am very concerned. I am also very skeptical of bait and switches in this country. We're going to protect the Jews, but it's actually going to ruin people's rights in this country. It's going to take protections away and it could turn against us in a second. So I am also very nervous about all the attention that anti-Semitism is getting. I'd like to see the equal amount of attention go towards anti-Muslim, anti-whatever, all people's, not just ours, because we don't want to be in the media. I feel like my grandparents saying no news about Jews is good news in the media, right? I feel like I just like channeled my ancestors with that.
Yeah. In a beautiful way. And that goes back to that higher goal concept. If everybody wants peace and to kind of get along and live your most meaningful life, and we make that what dominates the conversation, you end up with different results than what our leaders in the United States and Israel, not all of them, but many of them, and presumably that's true of Palestinian leadership as well, when you exclude Hamas, because that's not their higher goal. The everyday Palestinian wants peace, wants a meaningful, safe life, in the same way that every Israeli and Jew does. And that's probably true for everyone in the world. Once you get past the rhetoric and the God told me or God wants to do these violent things, that is clearly coming from a somewhat political place, somewhat power-oriented place, a somewhat exclusive where you treat everyone as other, which if you're Christian, you're ignoring the teachings of Jesus. If you're Muslim, you're ignoring the teachings of Muhammad and a long line of other imams and scholars. Same is true for Buddhists and Hindus and on and on and on. So let's all just agree on that common goal and have that as the framework.
Tell me something good. Something good. The sun is shining today in Brooklyn. A beautiful day. We can walk around and feel the air and feel joy, even in the midst of real challenge. We're still, and they say, the movement says that joy is an act of resistance. So I will not scroll. I will not scroll. I will not scroll. Rabbi Mike Moskowitz took a picture of himself at the airport holding like a little sign and said, there's a whole movement right now that's called the Beacon. And they're trying to do like on the ground, like be a beacon of light and love in the world. Like this is how we protest, we like put out light and love to each other. And Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, who's she's now the Rabbi Emeritus of CBST, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, the first LGBT shul in New York City. She sort of started this movement as an interfaith movement with a bunch of other clergy, pastors, and leaders in New York City, and we're hoping it spreads out. So I think every Thursday, just like during COVID times where we used to bang pots at 7 p.m. on Thursdays, they're doing the same thing once a week where they're sharing, as Rabbi Mike wrote on his thing, microaggressions can change the world. And microaffections, I just messed it up. Microaffections. So I feel like that is good. I'm still on the ground. I'm still smiling at people on the subway. I'm still, it shifts possibly their day, and it definitely shifts mine when I get that smile back, right? So that's all you could do, right?
Yeah, sure. But you've also directly experienced that kind of thing, not just on the subway,
100%.
But in your role as a ritual leader and an educator.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. I mean, I just officiated my first Hindu bar mitzvah, and that was a wild ride. I mean, it was truly a wild ride because you have a mother who's Jewish and a father who's a Brahmin, like in the Brahmin caste in Hindu tradition, Indian. And we had two ceremonies that happened. There was a Friday ceremony, which was called an ancient thread ceremony, which, by the way, threads, tzitzit, talit, there was like all these parallels.
Mm-hmm.
The main differences in those ceremonies were that at 13 or whenever you become of age, sometimes it's younger. I don't think it's exactly 13, but we chose 13. This is the time where you are allowed to understand your lineage and you can go out and study Tzelamat, right? So it's like this is the time where you get to start the learning of your heritage. And in bar mitzvah, it's not an exhibition of mastery necessarily, but it's definitely like I've done a lot of studying and I'm showing you that I'm ready to be a full community member and take on more responsibility in my community. And so we had those two events juxtaposed, and it was amazing because I got the opportunity to come to the thread ceremony, and I was there with the Hindu priest and asked a ton of questions and watched and learned and even participated a bit as well too. I was so honored to be a part of it. And then he was explaining everything as he went. And it was like, wow, I just feel so much closer. I feel so much closer, right? I didn't know all these things. And now I don't claim to know everything, but I certainly understand more from a tradition that is really wildly different than mine. And the next day, as you know, seeing me lead as a ritual and spiritual leader, like everybody's participating and everybody's going to understand, because we try to universalize a lot of the concepts so people have a way and a window into every moment of that passage, every one of those leadership moments, right? I tell my students that are becoming Bar Mitzvah that there's sort of like 3, maybe 4 moments of passage, right? You know, like a ritual, a rite of passage in that morning. The first one is when they put that talit on, which is really the hug of the ancestors, right? It's really and I'm always joking, you're taking on your people on your back. And I'm like, the talit is a lot lighter than what that actually feels like. No comment. So, you know, that's the moment of like, I'm choosing to take this on, right? The second is when they actually get the Torah in their hands and they sing the Shema during the Torah service, call and response. So that's actually speaking words of Torah and having people speak back to you and sort of saying, I'm claiming this and I'm going to show you that I'm leading you in Torah. The next piece is when they're called to the Aliyah, because they're really called up by their name. And so they're really like being witnessed as like being called in. And then the last and that's a real leadership moment, because they're about to tell you the story. Like we are like, not only are we saying like, you're holding the Torah and you're claiming this, but you're actually going to teach us Torah. And for storytelling, as you know, they're really going to teach us Torah. They're going to actually, okay. A wild and also wildly ancient practice of translation of Torah, of our ancient text, into meaningful conversations, oftentimes line by line as it's read, as it was, you know, back in the days of the Talmud, where we have a lot of this language around like what the Miturgaman, the translator, actually did in synagogues. And as Labshul does, as an artist-driven community that I co-founded, we're artist driven. So we utilize a lot of this, it's not as we say, it's not a side dish. It's inherent in the storytelling. We utilize the gifts of the student, whether it's theater or music or story or visual or whatever it is. So what I want to say is that third moment is they're becoming our teacher. They're really becoming our teacher, and they are holding court. Not to use your legal terms, but they're actually facilitating the conversation. We're actually truly learning from them. And they're putting us on the spot, making us wrestle with the same questions that they were wrestling with. So that's like the third moment of like kind of the rite of passage. But I always tell them that the fourth rite of passage is probably the most important one, which is when the parents come up and give them a blessing and they say really nice things about their child. And the child just has to stand there. And I tell them, you can't roll your eyes. You can't be like, quick, you know, mom, dad, whoever, come on, finish already. Like you have to just stand there maturely and like take in praise. It's a real rite of passage, right? Anyway, but what I often remind the parents and the young person is, and we don't do that blessing so often, but if somebody wants to do it, we do it. But what I remind them is like, when Bar Mitzvah probably evolved, there was no such thing as adolescence. You actually like went to work. You went to support your family. So theoretically, we should be doing this at like 18 or 22 or whatever it is, or 28.
Well, I think this is the rabbinic sense of humor. There's a lot in the Talmud that's play. I mean, there's word play all the time. And I think this is one of those moments where they're just like, oh, thank God I'm not like subject to this one's punishments anymore. Yeah. And to that end, I think the Bar Mitzvah process, and you're not the first person I've heard that from, my law partner's child having their Bar Mitzvah in the fall. So I'm getting used to saying that. But at the end of the day, so this is one of the many things we have in common. I've taught a lot of Bar Mitzvah students. It's just like close friends who want to do the learning on their own, but were unable to. So like I learned with the parents and the kids.
Gorgeous.
And I always invite them to do storytelling. The only one who accepted, we found out begrudgingly afterwards, was Eitan for my son. He did a storytelling bar mitzvah.
I remember that. We had to massage that whole thing.
Exactly. And I don't know if he regrets it to this day, but I certainly don't. But where I was going with this is the way I frame it for these kids and their parents is this is a commencement ceremony. You think of a commencement ceremony as a graduation, as a celebration of finishing, but it's called a commencement for a reason.
Right.
We're training you to start your Jewish life, whatever you do with it.
Imagine if you went off on your own from that point forward. If you pre-adolescent, pre the beginning of adolescence, if you were on your own, great. We've given you the skills and we've given you hopefully some possibilities of finding intention and meaning in it that you will choose to continue that in your own home when you go off to work or do whatever you're doing. I'll say back to kind of like the hard skills and then what are we actually teaching them to do? I think a lot of the families that come to us, as you know, that we end up working with, don't have robust Jewish backgrounds. They're often coming to us like this may be the first ever engagement with their Jewish identity.
Right.
Certainly if they're multi-faith, but also with like fully Jewish families that they will have engaged in. So we're really like, what is the Aleph Bet? And I think about that all the time. Like if you only have 45 sessions with somebody in the course of a year, what are you going to prioritize?
Sure.
What are you going to prioritize? I don't want to value anything publicly, but I'm saying like it's a family's real big decision to figure out what they value. And one of the things that we double down on is what you mentioned, and you sort of mentioned in passing, but I want to underscore it, is teaching them how to think critically.
Yeah.
That you are going to enter into a text and you're going to translate that text, not just like translate from ancient English translators to your modern words and how you would say it, but like talk back to that text, to question that text, that have real implications for today when you have laws and bills and folks in politics being citing chapter and verse for the basis of rule of law.
Yeah.
And you have people that are trying to get funding for like Christian charter schools or using government money for Jewish charter schools, whatever it is. Like if it's got to be, we have civic responsibilities. And if people are going to utilize Bible in that domain, we better know how to challenge that text.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, not to be so dramatic, not every 13-year-old is thinking about that, but certainly they will remember that Bible wasn't just spoon-fed to them and these stories are truth.
Yeah.
There is truth, but that they have the ability to kind of question and talk back to that text and understand it in multiple levels.
I think that's a core Jewish value.
Of course. But that's not necessarily being taught, is what I'm saying. That mitzvah education is not necessarily teaching these kids to do that.
I agree. I think that, I think storytelling does it really well. Hebrew Helpers does a good job of it. Mm-hmm. Individual mitzvah.
But that's not the generalist
no.
machine.
Yeah.
Machine.
The machine seeks to focus on the performative piece. And look, there's merits to that too.
Can you sing this blessing, which really focuses on like, could you participate in the service? But not everybody is spiritually, theologically, religiously inclined. Yeah. But I got to tell you, they could be in their home if we focused on what you do in your home and how you gather people around you. So again, like we come back to that piece of like, what are we prioritizing? Right. Are we giving people the tools to actually be in community? Do you know that there's an initiative through Shomer Collective, which is the sort of the hub of resources around grief, loss, end of life, death, and dying? Unbelievable. I give them like a huge plug. They've done such a mechaya, such service for this community. They did research that the Jewish community, progressive Jewish community, does not know how to do Shiva. Like they don't know how to act. They created a manual for what it means to act. They want to do Shiva trainings because the people who are not synagogue members, who are part of an intensive shul and they don't know how to like, so-and-so died. I now, as their friend, need to step up, galvanize a group of people, bring them food, they don't know how to do that. So, to me, these are the things that we need to be focusing on. What does it mean to be a Jew?
Right.
Right? Like, what does it mean to actually like be a Jew in your life and have these practices that are such meaningful, supportive, community-laden, kind, loving practices in our lives.
And this is another beautiful example. We're in the what's good part of the conversation, and efforts like this, even though we're talking about death and grief, it's such a beautiful thing to be part of something that helps someone deal with this transition. I just sent Sharon, Rabbi Browse, when our friend Ivan died a year ago plus now, she sent us the vidui that Ikar uses. That's the vidui literally means confessional, but it's a process that Ikar has shaped around helping navigate death with the person who's dying and their family. And it's a beautiful tradition. And this is one of the things that Sharon likes to talk about, Rabbi Browse likes to talk about. I met her before she was all caps Rabbi Browse. So
Same.
She was our neighbor, and
we were in school together.
Oh, no kidding! So you know David too.
Oh, I've known David since I was 16, and we were on Ramah seminar in Israel.
Amazing. So he's one of my clients. I consider them friends first, clients, and rabbi second. So she always talks about complexity, and this is a manifestation of the complexity we live in, because vidui, in and of by its nature, is something that's sad.
Right.
Someone's going to die, and there's going to be a measure of sadness, but it doesn't have to be all sad. It can be beautiful. You can sing around the bed of your loved one. You can help them transition peacefully.
By the way, you just used the key word, measure.
Yeah.
That people are often thinking about the end of their life and how did their life measure up? And how do you measure a life? How do you measure a year?
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
And daylights and sunsets and moonlights and cups of coffee in inches and miles and laughter and right. So it's like you actually give somebody the opportunity to let themselves know that they did measure up, right? They did. Like that's what our eulogy was for my dad. I mean,
how long has he been gone?
Today's been a big grief day. So I may cry when I talk about him because you know how grief goes, right? You know, he died June 3rd, 2020. And my eulogy was basically like for the people that are not, hotshot lawyers that have these like great careers and do these amazing podcasts and write all these songs, right? Or, ritual leaders who like have Spotify, blah, 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 whatever. Like for people who are like doing the work and just being in their life, it's like, how do we remember them? Like, how do they want to be measured? And my dad was always thinking about like how he wanted, was measuring himself. Growing up and not having a lot of means and then going to a restaurant with linen tablecloths. Right? Like that's how he had this in this mind of like that was arriving in some way. Right. So my eulogy was basically like, you did it. Here's what you did. Here's who we are because of you. Like here you did it, Dad. Great job. I'm getting sad, but it's beautiful. So I think that gift that you're talking about of like having these tools that actually even that's one of the beautiful gem pieces of Judaism is that even in these really, really challenging moments, there are ritual constructs and practices that help us be super present and not like just fake surface wise, like see the beauty, right? Not Pollyanishly, right? Like, but to actually like be present to the fact that all of those live in the same moment, right? And that our ritual tools actually help us with that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What was your dad's name?
Bob Less.
Well,
he was Bob Less to everybody.
May Bob's neshama have an aliyah. May his soul continue to rise. And it rises every day because you do such beautiful work and it's with heart and intention and meaning. And you create a lot of beauty for the rest of us, even while we wrestle with anxiety and nervousness.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just reflect that back to you. I'm taking that in, not like a bar mitzvah kid that's like, no, stop. But I'm really, truly like taking that in And I'm also reflecting similarly back to you. I remember when I first met you, it was just like, oh, I am magnetically drawn to this person who sees optimism, who sees the what can be, yes, and like literally from the moment I met you in the middle of the night or whatever it was.
It was at the airport.
At the airport at Heathrow, going to Limaud, UK. And we were just delirious. And I just like knew instantly you had a real panim that was panuya, that was like a real open face, right? And you embody the quality that will lift up my mom's name now, Madeline, which is Sever Panim Yafot. Right?
Wow.
That's who she was. Just an openness to people and just a smile on your face, greeting with grace and real likability.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, Madeline, you said your mom's name is?
Yeah, Madeline.
Well, Madeline and Saima, my mother, are kvelling because I got that thing from my mother. Like, I'm one of those people who will talk to anyone, but I always recognize someone who was, I like to say, in my chavrusa at Sinai.
Yeah. We were in a little group over here at Sinai. We were having a great time. Everyone's like, don't get too close to the mountain. I'm like, let's get close to the mountain.
I'm right there with you.
I can't hear from here. Let's get closer. I can't see. Look at those lights. This is crazy. Oh my God. I want to write down this music that's happening, this ram's horn. This is great. That's where we worship.
For sure. We brought amps and guitars.
I probably couldn't see though, because you were so tall, I couldn't see past you. But, Shep, can I go in front of you? I want to.
No problem. Always. You are awesome, Naomi. Thank you so much for giving me so much of your time and so much of your heart. This is a beautiful conversation.
So grateful. I feel energized as I head into Shabbat. Like, wow, lots of sparks heading into Shabbat. Thank you for the opportunity to just secretly just have some time with you because I miss you.
Thanks so much for listening. Special thanks to Naomi Less for joining me, to Devin Schwartz and E. Rose for their help in producing this episode, especially for turning it around so quickly, and to Jessica Chana Sweetler for her help on social media. You can find Until When and all of the other songs in this song cycle on most platforms that stream or download music, including Spotify and Apple. In the next episode of The Rest is Commentary, I'll be talking to Rabbi Joe Black, who is retiring from his position as senior rabbi at Temple Emmanuel in Denver, Colorado. Joe is not only an amazing rabbi, author, and educator, but he's a fabulous singer, guitar player, and songwriter, too. You can find out more about him by checking out his website, www.rabbijoeblack, that's JOE.com, including finding his albums Wire and Wood and Praying with Our Feet. We will discuss songs and relationships as divine gifts, the role of spirituality in creativity, the importance of collaboration, managing dual identities like being a rabbi and a musician, managing dual identities like being a rabbi and a friend, exploring the stages of spirituality, the profound insights and personal growth that come from simply having conversations, and so much more. All inspired by Joe's thoughts after listening to Endless, which is inspired by Psalm 42 and was written by Liz Hanlon and me. Please join us.